Hey everyone, and welcome to the Babylon Chronicles, a podcast that's dedicated to taking a look at the inner workings, discussions, and shenanigans involved with making one of the world's most powerful, beautiful, simple, and open web rendering engines, Babylon.js. My name is Jason Carter, also known as Pirate JC out there in the Babylon world, and I'm joined by my co-host, as always, Delta Kosh, or David Tui. Hey, David.
Yes, I saw comments on the previous episode where people say we are also very humble with this opening. I don't know if you saw that. Like, we are so humble, like best in the world, whatever. So yeah, I like that. I like that comment.
One of the best. We're not saying we are the best. We're saying there's one of.
Yeah.
There are
like
several incredible, powerful platforms out there, and we like to say that we're amongst that elite group of people. So there is that. But we are joined today by a very special guest, Anupam Das, who is engineer, graphics expert, storyteller, all-around tinkerer, who's coming to us to talk a little bit about a cool project that he's working on with Babylon, which is the Spectrum product customizer. So Anupam, maybe I'll just first start off and hand it off to you and say, you don't represent an internet service provider of any kind. You're a different Spectrum that you're here to talk to us about.
Definitely not the ISP. I can tell you that. Yeah, like I'm a graphic. My official title is a graphics architect.
So we are between friends. Perfect.
Absolutely.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. We can.
You can tell from the T-shirt he's wearing. We're in good company for sure.
Yeah. I just put it on by accident, you know.
But of course.
Yeah, yeah. But I wear this every day. This is my uniform.
I like it. So
but
good.
I work for a Spectrum customizer. Graphics architects is my official title. We're a product customization platform. We can get into that, the details on that later, I guess. But you know, long story short, the whole graphics architect title is like a lot of things. You know, you end up touching so many places. Like I come from I kind of, like, earlier in my career, I came from a tech art background. So I'm working on both like architecture of our graphics software, hardcore coding, but also working with our art team and look dev and getting stuff to look good and perform and getting it to scale, all that stuff. So yeah.
So something showing up on a screen isn't the end of the story. It has to show up correctly and be appealing to humans, and humans want to engage with that. And yeah, you're actually being quite humble about your background, because you come from a background in visual effects and games and art and engineering, and you've sort of worn a lot of different hats in your career, which I think has probably allowed you to blend those two worlds of technology and art extremely, extremely well. Do you mind sharing some of the projects you've worked on in the past?
Oh yeah, sure. I started my career actually at a small boutique firm in Santa Monica, California. I used to live in LA, sunny LA. I now live in Wisconsin, by the way. But
that's a change.
Yeah, it's a change. But, it's, like, I was really like a lot of kids, you know, blown away by Star Wars and all the cool computer-generated visual effects. So I really started from there. Funny, I went to school for software engineering, but I just really liked the visual stuff, and I got deep into the artistic aspect of it. So, you know, with lighting, modeling. One thing I really got into was lighting and shading, because I thought that really added, and like atmospherics, that really added a lot of like depth and cinematic flair to things. So that's kind of where I started kind of like really getting into, back in those days, you know, if you want to develop a shader, it's like the tools were kind of limited. It was getting better. This was like pre-next gen. So, you know, I kind of had to get forced into learning how to, you know, use some of my software software programming capabilities to write shaders and stuff. So yeah, like went from sort of traditional pre-rendered visual effects work to real time. Worked at Electronic Arts for a while, and then kind of got involved in the transition to next gen. Started using Unreal Engine a lot. Then, you know, years later, you know, worked on like Medal of Honor, was like a really old school game that I still
I love Medal of Honor. Yeah. Medal of Honor Frontline is still one of my all-time favorite video games.
Yeah. So that was really cool. Did a lot of like environment art and shaders, and that's when like Unreal started to do the node build material editor.
Yep.
So that really blew my mind. Like, oh wow, like you can have a tool that where I don't always have to be like building the tool. I can like
use the
tool to build the cool thing I want to build and give our players an awesome experience. So that like really once you go there, you can't go back.
For sure.
So fast forward from there, I went through a couple of game companies, worked at Activision. Then I ended up at a very interesting role at Industrial Lights and Magic at ILM.
Okay.
And also LucasArts. So this is back when LucasArts was still around. And
Monkey Island is the second favorite video game, by the way, just so we're throwing that out there.
Monkey is my first one.
Monkey Island.
We were working on a really interesting project called Star Wars 1313. Never got released, unfortunately.
Oh, it was stopped. I know that you were working for a woman. I can't remember her name, right? She was the lead of 1313. Does that ring a bell? Oh, gosh. Anyway, right.
Our lead was Kim Libereri, who now is a CTO of Epic. But Kim was like a big time, long standing ILM person that kind of went into games. And anyways, long story short, my challenge was really to bring a lot of these like pre-rendered assets, like Boba Fett and Yoda, and bring them into the real-time realm and make it look as good. So the idea was that instead of having a completely different pipeline, you would have the same like modeling, texturing, visual effects pipeline, but just different renderers, and the renderers need to match really good, right?
That's not an easy challenge.
So that's that was really cool. And then, anyways, long story short, after that, got a lot of experience with like shading and lighting and rendering, and really realized like this is my passion, like this is what I want to do, and I want to push the quality bar as high as I can. So weirdly, right around the end of that time, VR started coming into play, and one of the first everyone was playing with VR, right? And Unity SDK had a really awesome like VR API. It made it super easy. So one of the first VR things I did was I made a multiplayer VR thing where like you could see me and I could see you. It was like super, like we could like pass a box to each other. It was like super prototype. That's when I realized like having a connected experience is really cool. It's not just about the VR. It's like you and I in the same space and having a connected experience. But I also found out that when you're not on the web, building that, there's just a lot
complicated.
Yeah, it's complicated. But if you're on the web, it's just there, right? And that's kind of where I made my way to the web world. And I'm like, how can I build out these 3D worlds, but in a web framework? And that's when my whole like journey with WebGL started.
I love it. That's incredible.
Excellent.
That's absolutely incredible. And we started to cross paths because the Spectrum Customizer, the company, you're working for them and you're building out this idea of how can we make a 3D rendering platform where people can add different parts to a product, or they can change the colors of parts of a product, or they can customize it in all types of different ways. And so that's a web-based solution, and you guys came into the Babylon world looking for tech and figuring out what your future is, and that's how we got connected and you landed on Babylon. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, before I started at Spectrum, I gotta say, like, I never expected to be in this role. But one of the things that I was always very passionate about, just as a fan of things, like I love things. I think we all have like a thing. Like I see some cool stuff behind your, yeah, exactly,
sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Like I love design. I love great design and beautiful objects that are designed really well. So I love that, and I think one of the things that Spectrum does is enables our clients to offer people beautiful objects that they can really feel like it's their own, rather than like this plain vanilla, you go to Walmart and you just get like some speakers or you get whatever, This can be something that is like your color, your design, or if it's something that like you give someone as a gift, it's like a personal thing, like, you kind of made it for them, right? It's made to order, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of combining the world of like high design and great manufacturing and design with like the empowerment to let the customer kind of be the artist and the designer and combining those two, and then literally giving you a product that you've designed that shows up at your door a week later. So when I started thinking of it from that perspective, I'm like, wait, this is like way more than just like rendering a product on the screen, right?
Yeah.
There's like a whole like the design. It's a design tool essentially for millions of people to use, and then there's like a manufacturing side of it, right?
Yes.
So we do, you know, our platform kind of enables the visualization and customization of a thing, right? Whatever that thing is. But the other really interesting part is we connect with the manufacturing chain. So we connect directly with the factory and give the factory the sort of the metadata that they need to actually build the thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the third equation of this is like, if you're going to use a web-based tool to design a thing, then whenever that thing's going to be real and you're going to hold it in your hand one day, right? That better look like the thing you ordered.
Exactly what he was.
Oh, yeah,
of course,
for sure.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So a certain color red looks more pink, and you know, in reality, or it looks red on the screen, but you get it and it's pink or something, you're not going to be happy. So, you know, that need for a high level of rendering, fidelity, accuracy, performance, scalability, all those things, we kind of needed it all, you know. And after evaluating a couple of different solutions, we kind of landed at Babylon. And at the time, like, I don't necessarily know if anybody else was using Babylon for a similar use case. I couldn't find too many demos online, but we just kind of took a leap of faith, and it's been awesome ever since.
I love it.
I love that.
And there's actually a really cool full circle story here. So very, very quickly, 6-7 years ago, it's quite a while ago, on Xbox.com, you could go view Xbox controllers. And we, the Babylon dev team, partnered with Xbox to kind of, hey, we could spin around a single Xbox controller so you could see it from different angles. And that was pretty much the extent of the scenario. Since that time, obviously the Xbox hardware and controllers have evolved quite a bit. And the website had kind of moved on past that basic rendering. And then lo and behold, we on the Babylon team find out that there's a whole product customization system that is being built to show controllers and customize controllers and be able to add different colors and change all the stuff. And it come to find out, it's made with Spectrum. It's a Spectrum solution, which is powered by Babylon. So there's this really amazing kind of
without even us knowing it, which was
we had no idea.
Crazy.
We had no idea. It was really cool for us.
And that was the funny story for us too, because like when I got hired, you know, I was kind of like, you know, we were using an older WebGL based engine, and we were kind of like porting it to Babylon.js. And you know, I just knew about the website. I knew about obviously the forums, right? So that's where most of my, you know, the docs, and that's where most of my knowledge was coming from. I saw some tutorial videos which featured you, Jason, and you, David. So I'm totally geeking out right now because like you guys are like famous. So, anyways, you'll have to. I'll have to get your autographs after this. But anyways,
you don't want them; they're worth nothing.
It's like so so we're like, you know, okay, we're building this out, and it's kind of in the prototype state. You know, like any prototype, we're just using some sample objects, stuff like that. Or this looks good. We gotta like do this for real now. Like let's go. You know, and it's like who's gonna be our launch customer, right? And it just so happens that we were talking to Microsoft, and they were looking to, you know, really do like a next generation customizer for their controllers, right? Yeah. And we're like, all right, those are going to be the guys. So I started working on that project. I thought, I mean, just being Xbox and being a gaming company, high-end graphics, right? Like you can't disappoint. Most of the customers are like gamers.
It's a high bar.
Right, so if the graphics is crappy, you're gonna have a problem. So but the funny thing is, like, long story short, it's like I started getting into the weeds of this, and I'm just like what? And then I found out, I didn't know that Babylon.js was like involved, like Microsoft, like you guys were basically part of Microsoft. Until like I had I was having a problem or something, and we finally got a chance to meet, and that's when I found out, and I'm like, oh, this is crazy.
Yeah.
Full circle, right?
Full circle. It's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
They're very small.
That was the first. The Xbox Design Lab is the first product that we launched, Babylon.js. That was our big of faith,
And it's a really incredible showpiece for exactly what you were talking about earlier, Anupam, which is this idea of, I can go buy something that everybody else has, or I can make something that no one else in the world has that's uniquely mine, it's personal. And the extent of customization that can be done, many thanks to the Spectrum Customizer, and the visualization of that is really, really powerful. Definitely encourage people to go check that out. One thing that you brought up that I am quite curious about to hear your thoughts on is, obviously there's an obsession that you can have in displaying something on a screen across all devices to the user to set their expectations and try and meet their expectations for what's going to be delivered, to them at their home. Do you have any feedback from the manufacturing process that feeds into the visualization, right? Like we know it has to go from, the front end
to virtual.
Yeah, but do you get any feedback? Like, here's the exact color tone and how to match that. And is it a circular feedback system?
Yeah, I mean, this is like, you're getting into like some of the nuanced problems and challenges with product customization is like, it's not just about like displaying a static GLTF model on the screen, right? First of all, everything like just on the Xbox controller, like, here, I've got one right here, right?
Yeah.
I customized, like every little thing, every button, everything, you can change the color, you can have the paddles or not the paddles, right?
Yeah.
So, and the paddles have their own colors. So there's just, if you think about the number of combinations of different things you can do, it's literally in the millions. For the millions of different variations you can do. So the logic there gets really complicated. So we have a whole like data schema that we use to like help craft that logic and make it a little simpler.
Yeah.
So we have some tools that has nothing to do with graphics, that just data, right?
Yeah.
That is part of that. Then we have like the graphics layer, which we kind of plug in. Right, and that was actually one of the cool things about Babylon is it's so easy to plug in to other systems that are already existing, right?
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, we're feeding that data into the engine, and we're hoping that the engine
working the same.
Yeah, exactly. And so that logic for that data, like how many colors of a thing, how many variations of a thing, we have meetings with the client. We kind of come up with that logic, right? Of like the number of SKUs, the number of variations of things. And we kind of, from that conversation, we build a user experience that isn't super confusing to the user. Because if you think about it, like so many combinations of things, like how do we streamline that so that the user isn't like completely lost in this thing, right? We don't want to make like Maya.
Yeah.
No, of course.
No, definitely not.
So it's a challenge that way. So we have a great user experience team and a great front end team that work with our clients. They build out the logic. When it comes to me, that logic is already kind of fleshed out, and I have to build a renderer that's flexible enough to take in that data and render whatever it is it requests. Right.
So I have a question now. This begs for a question. Are you writing your own shader or are you using NME?
So we're not using Node Material Editor, but we are using PBR.
So you are directly pumping into the PBR material. I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
And actually, that's a great question because, like, gosh, I mean, 99% of all of our clients, including Xbox, are really using that PBR material. Like we use like every knob and every dial on that. Like, so we've done everything from all the subsurface stuff to scattering. We've done a lot of stuff with iridescence, and I mean, I could even, if you want, I could show you.
Sure, please.
Yeah, I would love to see. Yeah.
Sorry for the people listening to the podcast.
Visual stuff. It's like you might as well just show it.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I'll show you. I'm sharing my screen. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, we do.
Yeah,
we can.
Yeah. So like So like for example, here's a standard controller in Xbox
Yep.
Design Lab. So you know, you can obviously pick, you know, whatever color you want. But guess what? Like you can go in here, and this is actually the PBR iridescence.
Oh,
Right?
yeah, it's very
And
beautiful.
you can kind of see that iridescence.
Yeah.
So like
Very cool.
just the versatility of the PBR materials. Like we have done some what you call material plugins, which allow us to extend, you know, the PBR base material. And I can talk about that if you want. But really, a lot of the functionality just comes from the PBR materials that you guys have. And also, I would say, here's the Elite controller. This is actually the one that I just showed that I have in my hands. So this is really cool to be able to design this out and actually get it. And being a rendering guy, like I'm like looking at the metal finish on the top and seeing
Yeah, even the button, like
so now you can compare and really nerd out over the two.
Oh, totally. And by the way, stop me if I'm rambling on.
No, this is fantastic. I love it.
I mean, you know, yeah, I mean, I guess I'm just giving you a little tour of some of the how we've used Babylon in a product like this. But like, you know, like one of the things too, just even beyond PBR that I was really impressed with right off the gate was the post-processing stack. So we use tone mapping pretty heavily. So this is actually ASYS tone mapped. One of the things that we were seeing with an older version of our renderer that we had prior to Babylon was that if you had like a red, like you know, like a red surface like this, and you had a really bright light source, well, as that light source got brighter and brighter, the surface just got more red. It just got like washed out red, and I was like, wait a minute, like that doesn't seem right. Like, why is that happening? So our art team would have to literally have like 10 or 15 different lights in the scene just to like balance,
to compensate.
And so one of the first things I did, and again, a little bit of harken back to my visual effects background, because we use linear color space, linear workflow, you know, tone mapping very heavily in the film world. And I was like, I wonder if Babylon.js does this. Sure enough, like, you know, default rendering pipeline, right? I mean, you know, and it's like, oh, you just turn on tone mapping. Look at that, it looks great. Like, and you make a light source brighter, and it doesn't get more red. It actually starts looking more white, which is what you would expect, right? In a proper like linear color space. So I mean, that kind of stuff, man. It's like it blew me away right off the bat. I had to demo that stuff to our internal team, and you know, I mean, so when it comes to representing accuracy, both in terms of materials but also lighting. I think the tool set's already there, right? I didn't have to like build a tone mapping shader. I could have, but I didn't have to, right? I could just go right into the experience and start like look deving on some of the products that we're working on, which is super cool.
Cool. And I see you're using Bloom as well, right? On the tiny,
So we're using Bloom. So many features. We're using Bloom. We're using detailed neural maps on the controller.
Oh, yes, I see it. Yeah, I see it in the shade. Yeah.
But there's a very high frequency detail on here. Another thing that we do that's really, really critical is a lot of, you know, we have an authoring tool, right? Which on the right side, you see the Babylon.js inspector, which by the way is super awesome. But on the left side, we have our own kind of custom tools to swap out variations and stuff like that. So when you see this asset in our editor, it's like full screen. So it like takes up the whole screen, right?
Yeah.
But you know, when you see it in the customizer, it's much smaller.
Limited.
Limited pixel density. So hardware scaling, big deal for us, right? Like that's how we can get, like we are using MSAA, but we also use hardware scaling to get that like nice crisp and
sharp. Yes.
Yeah. And man, that's an awesome thing too. And here's like another, like I'm just jumping around here. On the top,
I love this one as well. It's a very good one.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. So this is again the iridescence. It's right there. It's looking really good. So this one actually uses dynamic hardware scaling, which I found I called it dynamic hardware. It's just called hardware scaling in Babylon lingo. But what we do here is whenever the user is not interacting with the asset, like right now, we go to a higher resolution. But as soon as I start moving the mouse, we go
Boom,
to
you reduce for the perf. Yes.
Exactly. And we only render frames when there's interaction. When it's still, we're not rendering any frames. The GPU is 0, right? So that really helps us like get the high, because as you use more hardware scaling, obviously you're rendering at a larger resolution. That's gonna slow down your system. So especially on mobile, I think like I would suggest like definitely relying on hardware scaling and doing this kind of trick where you are lowering the resolution as you're interacting. One of the areas where that gets really interesting is like if I add some text back here, so Babylon.js, look at that. So yeah, you can like dynamically add text and stuff, but even like we were seeing a lot of aliasing in the letters when we weren't using hardware scaling, because you can imagine it's very small coverage of pixels.
Yeah.
But going to that scaling really helped there. But again, it kind of started to slow down our frame rate, so we started to do this dynamic hardware scaling.
I like that idea. It's cool, right?
So
the
real question that comes to mind here is Spectrum Customizer responsible for the craze around Stanley Tumbler cups? Like, is there a direct correlation?
I mean, what is that question? Of course it is.
Because we have to acknowledge the fact that I think every human in like a 2-week span wanted a Stanley mug or cup or something of some kind.
Oh, I mean, it was so funny. Like we have a little Slack channel that tells us every time a customization has occurred. We don't know the details. Obviously, we just want to know, like, we want to keep track of like the traffic that we're getting.
Yeah.
And it was like a minute. It was so crazy, like when we launched, and it still is. Like it's just like a stream of text, And it's crazy how many orders there are for Stanley.
Yeah.
I mean, it's always surprised me, like when I started working on this product of like this scale that we are able to handle.
Yeah.
So yeah, I wanted to mention too, really quick too, like if you go on Stanley, you go on this like front page, like these thumbnails here. I think you hit on this earlier, Jason. Like these thumbnails are rendered using our backend rendering system.
Yeah.
So we're using Babylon on the backend as well to do these kind of.
I have a question then. Do you use that on the backend with Node.js, or are you using Babylon native for that?
So currently we're using Node.js Puppeteer.
Okay.
And then our next generation of this, we're hoping to use native. So we're working really hard on the native solution, which, again, I could talk in another half an hour about native, but yeah, that's been an awesome experience. Gary Sue, one of your guys, he's been super helpful. The forums. I think there's more and more chatter about Babylon native on the forums than before.
Yes,
like
true.
we started, it was kind of quiet, and now it's getting more popular. So
there's a common thing, and this is the reason we started building native at the beginning. There's a common thing where you start with an experience and you think to yourself, hey, it's going to target the web, cross-device on the web. And then you suddenly realize that there's actually a lot of compelling use cases to take the same rendering code, the same shader pipelines, the same rendering tech that you wanted to use for the web, and apply that in certain native circumstances. And so exactly what you're talking about, thumbnail generation for an infinite millions of combinations of possible things, is a huge thing that you want to do outside of the context of a browser, and it makes a ton of sense. So I love it. I love that you guys are using that. That's incredible.
Yeah, I mean, as you can see on Xbox, we've got, I mean, these images are used all over the place, and where a benefit of this is like, in the case of Xbox, they actually do have an internal design team that uses, like, I don't exactly know what rendering software they use, but use like a really nice, like, high-end rendering software.
Yeah.
And we have to essentially match the quality their rendering. And it came to the point where a lot of the things that they would normally use, like high-end rendering software to do, like these kind of images, or even like these like banner images on top, like we're essentially able to use Babylon.js as like a full resolution renderer now, right? Because the quality is there, and we're only rendering a single frame, right? So we can actually make a much higher resolution, crank all the settings, and render that single frame.
Full steam and
Interesting. So in some regards, it's like you're turning this real-time engine into a, pre-rendered kind of a solution, which is kind of cool. I love it. That's incredible.
Yeah. And like one quick other thing that I wanted to show is we are actually also using the animation system in Babylon.js. So if you see, like, if I change the points around,
I see. Yes.
and then, or if I opt to do the top case or not.
Oh, cool.
Back. Yeah, so you can see that the top case kind of comes off.
That's awesome.
Or the paddles can go on in and out. So, anyways, yeah, this is like using like the tween animation system Babylon.js. We're also at times we use Blender, and we can pre-bake animations and bring them in. So yeah, all that flexibility is just, again, it helps us sort of build the experience rather than focusing on like
I agree.
I love
Work on your value added. It's a good team up between us and you. For sure.
I agree. I definitely agree. So now the real hard question, I'm going to put you on the spot. So you have obviously been critical in building this incredible tool with a great team on top of Babylon. We are constantly obsessed about two things. We want to make a platform that is truly useful for people. So we obsess about how can we make sure that developers have the technology, the rendering capabilities that they need. And that comes with the second thing, which is a relentless pursuit of asking people what I call the magic wand question. Is so you've built something real, a company that uses Babylon, and you've got a magic wand, and you can improve something or change something or add something to make Babylon better and more useful for you and your company. What would it be and why?
I'm taking note.
Well,
don't be shy.
I think, well, this is a great question. I think everyone has a million answers, but I think one that we can certainly benefit from, and I think a lot of other people. I always think, like, what is something that not just me, but like everybody can benefit from is, I think, just more focus on performance. I mean, Babylon's already like super hyper performant, but in the web world, it's kind of, 3D on the web is a challenge because you have all these assets, you have geometry that literally, I think that frame rate wise, like, we're in a good place. A lot of it is like, how long does like a geometry take to, upload and be added to the scene, and shaders be compiled and those kind of things. So I think just like overall focus on performance and optimization would be a great addition. And maybe even before that, right? A few steps before that would be just some like good best case, like kind of what do you call it? Like some documentation, like these are the good things for performance. These are like not great things for performance.
Best practices.
Here's some tutorial videos on like, here's how you use the Chrome DevTools, to like profile something, and like, oh look, don't use an HDR, use an ENV, right? That's something that I actually came across. We were having like super slow load times when we were like testing stuff initially, and I went into the Chrome DevTools, and I, because it's like a timeline of like events, right? And it's like, what is this thing that's like taking like 5 milliseconds, right? And I click on it, and it's a .hdr file, right? Which is what we use for the
too big for
too big because it's like trying to generate the harmonics and stuff, right? And it turns out, I'm like, what's going on? And then it turns out you have a documentation on like, hey, don't use HDRs. And I didn't read that, of course. So yeah, by the way, use ENVs if you can.
Yes, good piece of advice for sure.
Yeah. I think the call for performance is an awesome one. We have these 4 pillars that we think about. Power. We want Babylon to be powerful, beautiful, simple, and open. Open, of course, is we want it to be open source. We're making tech we want the world to be able to take and extend and contribute to. On the power subject, we think a lot about how do we make this thing go as fast as we can on as many devices as we can, while also giving capability and beautiful rendering. And it's a balance, it's a dance. And one of the really fun things about the space that we're in from our perspective is to look at what technology exists and how can we like try new things and break things and finagle it in new ways, but then also what technology is coming down the road. and shaping the future of kind of browsers. And in this spirit of kind of performance, one of the things that we believe we're just as an industry just scratching the surface on is nothing against your t-shirt here, but web GPU. We're quite excited about the future of the possibility with web GPU. And I think WebGL has been around for 10 plus years, and we've extended it to be able to do incredible things. And we think web GPU is just beginning its journey, and there's a lot of performance that can be unlocked. In fact, we're already thinking about a few things for ourselves about Babylon and the future of performance thanks to web GPU. So I really appreciate you talking about that one. That one's going to be a big one for us.
I checked out David's talk on Babylon.js and web GPU like a long time ago, and that is actually one of those early decision-making points that I was like, here's a platform that isn't just focused on like right now, but like is trying to, and it's not easy to do, as you guys know, but it's trying to build a framework for that future next generation.
Yeah.
I also love the backward, no breaking changes when. And by the way, that one is a big deal for us because like our clients, like they're always asking for stuff, right? And it's like as soon as I see something that's broken, there's inadvertently someone just a pull request or whatever and merge it. Thank you, Dave. And it's like, oh well, I mean the fix is to upgrade, right?
Yeah.
And so the problem with that, what I've experienced, like especially when I was working in the early days of like Unity and Unreal, and they've also improved a lot too, is like an upgrade is a very anxiety-producing thing.
Yeah,
it's like,
for sure. Yeah.
I told my PM that this was going to be a 2-point ticket on Jira, and now it's a 12-point ticket.
Yeah.
And so now like almost on a weekly basis, we're like upgrading to whatever the latest is without even a thought, and
we're gonna record that podcast is super important because man, I'm facing a strong ask from a lot of my internal engineers to.
No, you're not. Don't
over-exaggerate
this.
No, I know we're
everything.
getting that too. I mean, like, look, I know that I think you had a blog about the
Babylon X,
Babylon 10 X, Babylon X, and the idea being like maybe lower bundle sizes and all that, which by the way would be welcome. Not saying that it's the bundle sizes are totally. I mean, we have launch products, right? And they're very. I mean, for what? Here's the other thing. You have to think about we had to think about what is the value we're providing to our end user versus the cost. There's always a cost, right?
Yeah.
So if you have like a super, super lightweight renderer, maybe you can't do all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
So there's a trade-off there. And so we have to be reasonable about like what the expectations are, in my opinion. But with that being said, man, I mean, you guys, if you could make it even more, I mean, it's incredible how it is now with the capability. We're able to get like close to a path-traced rendering,
Yeah.
Which is crazy. On a web browser, like who does that?
Yes, that works everywhere.
And you're really hitting something that is honestly almost a daily conversation for us, which is again about balance. We cannot take for granted the fact that people are building with Babylon in the hopes that they can continue to build with it and their previous versions aren't going to break. Because as you pointed out, it is so annoying to take an update to a platform, a critical platform you're building on, and then for that to be a 3-month project. And you're like, I just want to go. I just want to develop new things for people. It's annoying. It's terrible.
Yeah.
At the same time, backwards compatibility brings with it challenges for innovating for the future. And this is a very healthy tug of war. And for us in the space that we're in, it's a constant asking ourselves in a balance of how do we blend both of those things to do the best we can in both. And at times, and there's an active conversation on the forum right now that we encourage everybody to check out, which is about Babylon X and a thought about if we did break or relax backwards compatibility for a version like once every 10 years to get step function perf gains, would it be worth it? And we ask it not because we're planning on it. We ask it because we're legitimately wanting to know from people if this is worth it or not. Like we want voices into that because, again, bringing back to what I was saying earlier, we want to build something that is useful for people. That's at our hearts. That's what we want to do.
Totally.
We're just about out of time here, but before we go, there's one final thing I wanted to do, which is we've talked a ton about the Spectrum Customizer. I don't want to stop the podcast without asking if anybody out there is interested in a customization platform for a products for e-commerce site. How do they get in touch with you or the company to engage, to talk to you about it?
Yeah, so if you just go on spectrumcustomizer.com, that should take you to our website, and there's a little information on what we do, and there's actually a little tab on, like, specifically on the rendering side, our capabilities there. And also on the Babylon.js forums, I go by, I think, Anupam D. Yeah.
Oh.
And
Awesome.
I think that I'm right about that, but I post a lot of annoying questions, so you'll know me. You'll pick me up right away on there. So feel free to message me.
We want only customers with annoying questions because they help improving the product.
Yeah.
So if you have questions, rendering questions, anything like that, that's great. But if you just want a product customizer solution for your e-commerce site, spectrumcustomizer.com, definitely check it out. And Anupam, honestly, a massive thank you for so many things, for joining us on the podcast and chatting, for pouring into the Babylon community, for using it and stretching it to make it better, and for helping us learn how we can make it better as well. Thank you for everything that you do for us. We appreciate it.
I mean, and it's an honor to be here. Thank you guys for making Babylon. It's been a great tool for us, and we're going to continue to use it in the future. And I just also wanted to give a shout out to all the amazing team at Spectrum. I didn't mention the amazing 3D team that's building these amazing assets.
Yeah.
Without those assets, we wouldn't really have anything awesome to do. So, shout out to all the talented artists out there that build content for us. I think it's very, very cool. And obviously, we've got our front end engineers, back end. It's a team effort. But I'm honored that you guys would select me to be part of this podcast, and I hope to help other people if they're wondering, if this is a good solution or not for them. Please reach out to me. I can give you my, feedback or techniques or whatever you want. So
awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see everybody on the next one. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah.